Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. Serena Reynolds stood by her husband's casket with her two small children, Micah, 4, and baby Zora, barely 18 months. The sun beat down hard on the cemetery grounds in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Yet her body felt cold. Grief had a strange way of draining everything: warmth, energy, even time. Dressed in a plain black dress that clung to her thin frame, Serena could barely keep herself standing as the final words were spoken. Her husband, Elijah, had died in a sudden construction accident just 10 days earlier, and now the only life she knew was being buried beneath her feet. As mourners began to leave, Elijah's mother, Vivian, walked over in polished heels and a wide-brimmed black hat. She had barely spoken to Serena since Elijah's death. There was no hug, no sympathy, just a tight smile and a cold whisper. "You and those children need to be out of my house by Friday." Serena's eyes widened. "Vivian, please," she said, her voice cracking. "This is the only home Micah and Zora have ever known." Vivian's smile did not change. "You were there because of my son. Now he is gone. So is your place." Serena dropped to her knees, right there by the casket. Grief turned into desperation. "Please," she begged, grabbing Vivian's hand. "Please do not do this. We have nowhere to go." Vivian yanked her hand back with a disgusted sigh. "Do not embarrass me," she muttered, glancing around at the few guests still lingering. Then, without hesitation, she slapped Serena across the face. The sound echoed across the quiet cemetery. "That house was never yours," she hissed. "You were just borrowing it while Elijah was alive." Serena's head snapped to the side, her cheek burning. Micah cried out and clung to her while little Zora whimpered in confusion. No one stepped in. The remaining guests averted their eyes. Some turned away altogether. Shame and rage crashed over Serena like waves, but she could not respond. Not there, not in front of her babies. She wiped her tears, stood slowly, and walked away from the grave with her children beside her. The man she loved was gone, and the roof over her head was going with him. 2 days later, Serena was officially homeless. Vivian had changed the locks. Most of Serena's belongings, clothes, diapers, even the children's toys, were stuffed into garbage bags and left on the porch like trash. With no close family of her own, she turned to the only friend who had not disappeared after Elijah's death, her old high school classmate, Jada. "I can give you the couch for 2 nights, Jada said, guilt in her voice. "But my boyfriend does not want anyone staying long-term." Serena nodded. 2 nights is better than none. On the 3rd morning, Jada's boyfriend made it clear they were not welcome anymore. "I am sorry," Jada said, helping her load the children and bags into the back of a borrowed minivan. "I wish I could do more." Serena nodded silently and drove off, not knowing where to go. Over the next few weeks, she bounced from one temporary situation to another. A neighbor's basement, a stranger's couch, a motel paid for by a local church. None of it was stable. The children cried constantly. Micah asked every night, "When are we going home, Mommy?" Without a permanent address, Serena could not keep a steady job. She took what she could, cleaning offices at night, passing out flyers, washing dishes at diners under the table. She fed the children before herself. She bathed them in gas station sinks. She slept with one arm around both of them wherever they could find safety for the night. But safety became harder to find. By week 4, Zora developed a fever that would not go down. Serena spent an entire night in the emergency room waiting room because she did not have insurance. The doctor said Zora had bronchitis. "You need to get her into a warm, clean space," he said, "or she will not get better." Serena tried. She called every number on every flyer. Doors kept closing. With every door shut and no money to her name, she eventually broke into an old abandoned textile factory on the outskirts of Baton Rouge. She found a dusty corner on the 2nd floor and made a makeshift bed out of old rugs and a flattened box. It smelled like mold and rust, but at least there was a roof. That night, with Zora wheezing beside her and Micah curled up under her coat, Serena cried into her hands. "I am sorry, babies," she whispered. "I am so sorry." But the nightmare did not end there. 2 nights into their stay at the factory, Serena was attacked. She had gone downstairs to use a broken sink to clean Zora's bottle when 2 men stumbled in, clearly high. Eyes glazed, voices slurred. "What are you doing in here?" One of them sneered. She tried to run, but they cornered her against a stack of crates. She screamed, kicked, bit. They beat her until her lip bled and her shoulder dislocated. But before the worst could happen, a loud noise, glass shattering, sent them running. Another man, older, homeless, had thrown a brick from the outside and scared them off. Bruised and broken, Serena crawled back to her children. Her shirt was torn. Her eye was swelling shut. But they were still asleep. Thank God. That night, lying in pain beside them, she made a promise through her tears. "This is the last time we will ever be this low," she whispered. "I am going to get us out of this, even if it kills me." Somewhere deep beneath the grief and the pain, something began to beat in her. Not just survival. Fire. And that fire was going to change everything. The next morning, Serena wrapped her swollen arm and found a battered library downtown. She needed a place to think, to breathe. The librarian gave her a soft look, noticing her bruises but asking no questions. Serena sat at one of the free computers and searched for help. Shelters, soup kitchens, women's centers. Every phone call ended with, "We are at capacity," or "We can add you to the wait list." But on page 5 of her search, she found something different. The Phoenix Rise program, a small nonprofit for displaced mothers in the South. They offered job training, emergency housing, and trauma therapy. "Call us," the site read. "We see you." Serena called. A woman named Miss Geraldine answered. Her voice was warm and strong, like the mother Serena never had. "Come in now," she said. "We will take care of you and those babies." Serena cried on the bus the entire way there. The shelter was small, clean, and quiet. They gave her a Real bed and a hot meal. Zora finally slept without coughing. Micah smiled again. For the first time in weeks, Serena slept through the night. Not with one eye open, but with both closed and a heart still beating. The staff at Phoenix Rise did not just give her a room. They gave her tools. They signed her up for a general educational development course, helped her access Medicaid, and placed her in a free culinary training program. "You have hands built for healing," Miss Geraldine said as she watched Serena knead dough one afternoon. "And I do not just mean food." Serena smiled for the first time in months. She started writing in a journal, taking pictures of her dishes and researching catering licenses. Slowly, her life was shifting like dawn rising after the darkest night. 6 months later, Serena graduated from the culinary program with honors. She was chosen to intern under Chef Lionel, an award-winning chef who ran a soul food bistro in mid-city Baton Rouge. "You have a fire in you," he said. "And pain like that makes food taste honest." With his help, she built a small client base catering day parties, community events, and office lunches. She called her business Grace and Grit. It started with one flyer taped to a grocery store door and soon grew into a steady stream of orders. With her first collected checks, carefully saved until she had $1,200, Serena rented a 2-bedroom apartment. It was not fancy, but it had warm lights, clean floors, and her name on the lease. She bought secondhand furniture, colorful curtains, and a bunk bed for the children. Micah chose the top bunk and called it his sky fort. Zora's health began improving. They laughed again. They danced in the kitchen. And every night, Serena sat by the window with her journal and whispered, "We made it one more day." One afternoon, while picking up groceries, Serena ran into someone she had not seen since Elijah's funeral. Vivian. Her mother-in-law stood at the self-checkout with a cart full of boxed wine and frozen dinners. Serena almost turned around, but Vivian saw her first. She squinted, looked at the children, and said, "Still dragging them around like a burden." "Huh." Serena did not flinch. "We are doing just fine." Vivian scoffed. "But you are still bitter about the house." "Not that it matters. I sold it last month. Needed the cash." Serena nodded slowly. "I hope it was worth it." She started to walk away, but then Vivian said something that stopped her cold. "You know, Elijah had a second policy, right? One he kept secret from you." Serena turned. "What are you talking about?" Vivian smirked. "He made me the beneficiary on a private one years ago. Said he did not trust you with money." Her tone was cruel, smug, but something about it did not sit right. Serena walked away, but the question stayed. That night, Serena pulled out a small black box she had kept since Elijah's death. It held old documents, his journals, and photos. She flipped through everything until she found a letter tucked into a folded insurance brochure. It was addressed to her in Elijah's handwriting. "Serena, if anything ever happens to me, check the safe deposit box at Magnolia Credit Union. Everything you will need is there." Her hands trembled as she read it again. He had left her something Vivian did not know she had found. The next morning, she visited the credit union. After showing identification and her marriage certificate, the clerk brought her to the vault. Inside the box was a single manila envelope. Inside that, a $250,000 life insurance policy listing Serena as the sole beneficiary. There was also a deed transfer document with both of their signatures and a date 2 weeks before Elijah died, making her co-owner of the house, the one Vivian had sold illegally. Serena's hands shook with equal parts relief and rage. Everything she had been denied had been hers all along. Vivian had thrown her and her babies to the wolves out of cruelty and greed. But now the truth was in her hands. She did not want revenge. She did not want drama. She wanted justice. Serena met with a legal aid attorney the following week with copies of the deed, the insurance policy, and the proof of the illegal sale. The lawyer's face turned serious. Ms. Reynolds, she had no legal right to sell that house. Not with your name on the deed. And if she claimed to be the sole beneficiary, she may have committed insurance fraud as well. Serena's heartbeat quickened. "What can we do?" she asked. The lawyer, Ms. Wallace, leaned in. "We are going to get your house back. And maybe more." The process was not easy. It took 3 months of hearings, paperwork, and cold courtroom days with Vivian sitting just a few feet away, still smug, still unbothered. She rolled her eyes when Serena walked in with her children. She even claimed Elijah would have wanted her to have it. The arrogance felt endless. But truth has a weight to it. When the judge read the deed aloud in court and acknowledged Serena as the rightful co-owner, Vivian's expression cracked for the first time. When he ruled that the sale was invalid and the property must be returned or Vivian would face felony charges, her mouth finally fell shut. Serena did not cheer. She did not gloat. She simply gathered her documents, lifted her chin, and walked out of that courthouse with her children's hands in her own. "Mommy, do we get our old house back now?" Micah asked on the courthouse steps. Serena smiled down at him. "Yes, baby. But not just the house. We are getting our home back." That weekend, they returned to the small brick house on the corner of Collier Street. It smelled musty and looked stripped, but it was theirs. Every wall, every memory, every inch. She spent the first week scrubbing walls and mopping floors. Friends from the shelter came to help her clean, paint, and refurnish. The community who once turned away began to show up piece by piece. Chef Lionel brought kitchen supplies. Miss Geraldine sent over a new crib for Zora. And Micah planted flowers in the yard. "So Daddy's spirit can smile," he said. Serena watched from the porch, arms folded, heart full. She had not just survived. She had returned stronger than anyone expected. Grace and Grit became a neighborhood sensation. Serena began catering school events, local weddings, and Sunday church functions across Baton Rouge and nearby towns. Eventually, she opened a small storefront 2 blocks from their home. The windows smelled like butter and thyme and smoke. Her food became known for more than taste. It was healing food. Her story spread, and word of mouth did the rest. One day, a local news outlet interviewed her for a segment called From Shelter to Success. The crew filmed the bustle of the kitchen, the laughter at the counter, the way Serena touched the back of a chair to steady a nervous customer. When asked what kept her going, she said, "My children, my pain, and my promise to never let what broke me define me." It was not a speech. It was a fact she had lived. Vivian never reached out again, but Serena saw her one last time, standing across the street as reporters filmed outside the new cafe. She did not yell or speak, just watched. Serena met her eyes briefly, then turned to help an elderly customer carry a plate to their table. She did not need to exchange words. The silence said everything. The woman who once slapped her by her husband's grave had become a ghost in her story, and Serena was finally living. Months later, a young woman named Belle came into the cafe with 2 small children and a bruised eye. She did not say much at first, just ordered the cheapest item and sat in the corner with her babies. Serena noticed. She brought over a full plate, sat beside her, and whispered, "You do not owe me your story, but I see you." Belle broke down. They talked for hours. And by the end, Serena handed her a business card for Phoenix Rise. "They saved me. They will help you too." That night, Serena lay in bed between her children, staring at the ceiling. The rain tapped gently on the window. Zora slept soundly now, no coughs, no wheezing. Micah's little foot rested against her leg. She thought back to that freezing factory floor, the slap at the funeral, the months of despair. It could have destroyed her. Instead, it stripped her down to her core and built something stronger in its place. She was not just a widow or a mother. She was a fighter, a builder, a survivor. One day, she found Elijah's old journal among her things. In it, a line he had written months before his death. "If I am not here, promise me you will rise. You have always had the fire. Do not let the world put it out." She closed the journal, tears streaming down her face. But they were tears of release this time. He had known her. He had seen her. And in her strength, she was honoring him every single day. On a mild Saturday morning, Serena stood on her front porch, watching Micah and Zora chase fireflies that had not yet given in to daylight under the shade of the magnolia tree. The porch light flickered on as the sun slid behind a cloud. A breeze carried the scent of smoked turkey wings and collard greens from the cafe down the block. Life had come full circle. Not perfect, not painless, but whole. The house had changed under her hand. She had repainted the kitchen a deep cream and replaced the cracked tiles with vinyl she could afford and lay herself. She kept one wall in the hallway bare and tacked up drawings of suns and crooked houses and a giant crayoned heart that Micah insisted was the exact size of his. She wrote a single-framed sentence in the entryway. "We rise." It was a promise, an oath, a memory. At Grace and Grit, Serena added a weekly community dinner. Free plates for anyone who needed one, no questions asked. She watched regulars slip extra cash into the jar and teenagers haul folding chairs down the sidewalk. She saw the older man who had once thrown a brick to save her, Mr. Henry, shuffling in one evening with a battered cap in his hands. She set a plate in front of him before he could ask. He nodded once, eyes damp, and ate in grateful silence. On the anniversary of Elijah's death, Serena took the children to the cemetery just outside the city and laid flowers against his stone. The grass was damp, and the air smelled like impending rain. Micah traced the carved letters with a careful finger. "Daddy asked us to rise," he said, solemn, as if he had overheard what Serena had read in the journal. "We did," Serena answered. She kissed her palm and pressed it to the granite. "We will keep doing it." The lawsuit resolved fully in Serena's favor. The court's final order not only voided the illegal sale, but required Vivian to return any funds she had received from the buyer. The buyer, an investor who claimed ignorance, relinquished his claim without a fight after Ms. Wallace's filings laid out the paper trail. When Serena received the letter confirming the property's status and the insurance policy payout, she sat at the worn kitchen table and let herself weep in relief. She used part of the money to establish a small emergency fund for mothers referred by Phoenix Rise. She did not talk about it publicly. There was no plaque, no announcement, just a quiet account that Miss Geraldine could access when a woman needed a week at a motel, or a bus ticket, or a lock changed before nightfall. "You remember the first time you slept safely again?" Miss Geraldine asked as they signed the paperwork. "I do," Serena said. "Let us make sure someone else does too." The cafe grew, not in a rush, but like a tree. Steady. Serena trained 3 young cooks, all of them graduates of the same culinary program, and set a policy that every worker ate a full meal at the end of a shift. She posted a note above the mop sink that read, "Dignity is a practice." When a new landlord on the block tried to raise rents on 2 longtime tenants, Serena organized the storefront owners to push back in writing and in person at the hearing. They won. One evening, as the sky turned copper, Vivian passed by again, this time alone, walking slower than before. She stopped at the window and watched Serena at the counter with Zora on her hip, laughing at something Micah said as he counted change with a cashier. Vivian's face flickered, something like regret, or maybe just time pressing in. Serena did not go to the door. She stood still, resting her cheek on Zora's curls. After a long moment, Vivian moved on. Serena did not hate her. She did not have room for hate anymore. Pain had burned it out of her and left something clearer. Not naivete. Not even forgiveness in any formal sense. Just the sure knowledge that a person could choose to become a different kind of ancestor. She wanted to be the kind her children could speak of with warmth when they were grown and out in the world on their own. The night the cafe celebrated its first full year, Serena stepped into the alley behind the building and breathed in the sweet, heavy air. The hum of conversation and clatter of plates drifted through the propped open door. Mr. Henry sat on a milk crate, the glow from the sign catching the brim of his cap. "Good crowd," he said. "It is a crowd with somewhere to be," Serena answered. "That is the miracle." Before closing, she walked home with Micah and Zora, their fingers looped around hers. They paused at the yard and admired the flowers that had stubbornly bloomed along the fence line Micah had watered for weeks. Inside, Serena checked the locks, filled the kettle, and set out tomorrow's school clothes on the sofa. She placed Elijah's journal back on the shelf and whispered, "This is ours, and no one will ever take it from us again." In the morning, light feathered across the floorboards. Serena poured coffee and flipped pancakes in the kitchen that smelled like vanilla and orange zest. Zora toddled in with a stuffed bear, dragging it by the ear. Micah marched behind, serious and sleepy, announcing that he had dreamed the cafe turned into a rocket ship and everyone on the block had cheered. "We fly, then we land," Serena told him. "We always land." Later that day, Belle returned, chin higher, bruises fading to yellow. She talked about a caseworker and a court date, about a sleep that felt safe for the first time in months. Serena held Zora on one hip and packed 2 extra corn muffins into Belle's bag without comment. "You do not have to pay me back," Serena said when Belle tried to slip a folded $5 bill across the counter. "Just keep your promise to yourself." Belle nodded and pressed her lips together, holding in a new kind of tears. On a quiet afternoon between lunch and dinner service, Serena walked through the house on Collier Street and touched the smooth paint, the soft throw on the arm of the sofa, the little dent in the hallway where Micah had bumped his scooter. She stood by the front window and watched shadows of leaves move slow on the living room rug. The ache of everything she had lost did not vanish. It simply took its place beside what she had built. When dusk fell and the streetlights flickered awake, Serena stepped onto the porch. The wind carried the scent of her cafe down the block, mingled with the clean, ordinary smell of cut grass. Micah and Zora chased another round of fireflies, cupping tiny lights in careful hands, and then letting them go. Serena leaned against the post and closed her eyes. The world had not spared her, but it had not defeated her either. She opened her eyes, watched her children streak across the yard, and knew with quiet certainty that they would rise, and keep rising, in the house that was finally undeniably theirs. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.